Good morning, students. I hope you all doing your work properly. And yesterday we were talking on heterotropic nutritions, and in heterotropic nutrition we learned how amoeba is taking nutrition. Nutrition in amoeba and also nutrition in human beings, right? And there are questions I gave you yesterday. Hope you all learned that question. In the coming classes, we will have a small test so that we'll find how much you learned in this topic. And today we are going to learn a new topic, respiration. Respiration. As we know that respiration is the very important thing. If only the dead animal or a dead living being, they won't respire. The rest all will respire. What is actually respiration? When we talk about respiration, we should know one very important thing. Respiration is the process by which food is burned in the cell of the body with the help of oxygen to release. So whatever food, in the nutrition part we learned how food is very important for our life. If there is no food, no energy, right? So the food material taken in during the process of nutrition is used in cells to provide energy for various life processes. So respiration is one of the process by which food is burnt in the cell of the body with the help of oxygen to release energy. So it takes place in the mitochondria of the cell. You all know that mitochondria is the powerhouse of our body, right? So it produces lots of energy, and the energy released during the respiration is used to make ATP molecules. What is ATP molecules? If I say more easily, I can say that ATP molecules are full of energy. So the abbreviation of ATP is adenosine triphosphate. And where this ATP molecules generates, it generates from ADP molecules. What is ADP? It is adenosine diphosphate, and also an inorganic phosphate. So maybe this molecular, this new term maybe confuse you. When we go to learn some important topics in the next classes, you'll be understand more on it. What is ATP? ATP is the energy currency for most cellular processes. Whatever cellular process is going on in our body, this is actually an energy currency. It is full of energy. The energy released during the process of respiration is used to make an ATP molecule, right? And it is come from ADP and some of the inorganic phosphates, right? This is what happening. From ADP, it's having a very little amount of energy with the help of a phosphate and some energy. This energy comes from respiration. All they combine to form ATP. Okay, with this help of ATP only, and this ATP is generated on mitochondria, right? This has a lot of energy in that, right? So the energy stored in the cells in the form of ATP molecules, right? So how much energy we are getting it from the food, and how much energy is utilized through respiration, everything is stored in the form of ATP molecules. When the cells need energy, ATP is broken down in the presence of water to form ADP, and energy is released. So you can look at this equation. You can see here, this is full of energy. As we know that how this ATP is formed, it is from ADP plus phosphate from energy. And how it is going to be utilized? When the cell needs energy, this ATP, what they do, they started broke themselves, and they started releasing lots of energy in the form of ADP, and some of the water is also released. I just want to show you another thing. This is the thing we learned as in the how ATP is formed. ADP plus phosphate plus energy forms ATP. Then how this ATP it breaks down, and also they producing energies, right? And how this respiration, and what are the different types of respiration we're going to learn. Respiration is of two types. One is aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration, when in lower classes you may learn on aerobic and anaerobic, and same thing we are going to learn, but a little extra knowledge on respiration. Aerobic respiration, it takes place in presence of air, oxygen, mainly oxygen, and it produces more energy. Even human, we all taking an aerobic respiration, right? And the end products are carbon dioxide, water, and energy. So it takes place in most organisms. What is anaerobic respiration? It takes place in the absence of oxygen. You can see the difference between these two: presence of oxygen, and this is an absence of oxygen. And anaerobic respiration, it produces less energy, but aerobic produces more energy. Anaerobic respiration, the end product are lactic acid, in other words ethanol, carbon dioxide, and energy. Because in anaerobic respiration we are going to have two different types of respirations we are going to learn in the coming topics. One is if there is a lack of oxygen happens, what happens, and in the absence of oxygen. There is a lot of difference between lack of oxygen and absence of oxygen. So that we are going to learn in anaerobic respiration. Then it takes place in muscle cells and in yeast. Okay, that's what I told you, two different things. One is lactic acid, sometimes it forms on the muscle cells. Maybe you learn a word in your smaller classes in 7th standard, I think, muscle cramp. When we do lots of exercise continuously or running a lot, sometimes our legs we got pain, and some kind of pain, that is cramp, muscle cramp. And why this muscle cramp happen? Because the energy which is present on that particular muscle is utilized completely. That means the oxygen which is present on that particular muscle is completely removed. So there is an absence of oxygen will be there. So immediately, if there is an absence of oxygen, lactic acid will be produced in that area. That is one thing. The second thing is yeast or fermentation, right? As this is also you learn in a smaller classes, the yeast, how it produces, and it produces ethanol and alcohol. Maybe you have done this an activity in 8th standard, adding some yeast on sugar water and keep it in a warm place for some time, and it smells like an alcohol. Okay, these are the main topic we are going to consider. We are going to learn on this chapter: respiration, aerobic and anaerobic. And aerobic, some of these points are given, and anaerobic, some of the points are given. Okay, let's learn deeper on what is actually aerobic respiration. Okay, aerobic respiration is, in aerobic respiration, glucose is converted into pyruvate. Pyruvate, what is pyruvate? Pyruvate is nothing but glucose molecule is having the formula, the C6H12O6, right? So the carbon which is present inside the glucose is C6, and that breaks into, so 6 will become half, that means 3. So that is pyruvate. So that means in aerobic respiration, glucose converted into pyruvate, half. Okay, it become half in a cytoplasm. And this mechanism takes place on a cytoplasm. You all know that cell, and inside the cell we have a nucleus, and between the nucleus and the cell membrane, you can see lots of cytoplasms are there, right? So in this aerobic respiration, glucose is converted into pyruvate in the cytoplasm in the presence of oxygen. And then in the presence of oxygen, what happened? Pyruvate is converted into carbon dioxide, water and energy in the mitochondria. So in mitochondria, what is happening? All these things are happening on the cell, right? Breaking down, everything is happening on the cell. So you can still look at this equation, you can understand glucose, it becoming pyruvated. Pyruvated means it become half of it, and where this reaction takes place, it takes place in the cytoplasm. Once it is getting pyruvated, again in presence of oxygen, this is converted into carbon dioxide, water and ATP. ATP we learned in the last topic, it is energy, complete form of energy. And where this reaction takes place? In the mitochondria. Okay, I'll repeat once again. Once the glucose which is pyruvated becoming off, which takes place on the cytoplasm, right? And this process takes place in presence of oxygen, because we are learning aerobic, right? Aerobic means presence of oxygen. Again the pyruvated one in presence of oxygen becoming carbon dioxide, water and lots of energy, and this takes place in the mitochondria. And maybe you can easily understand this figure. C6H6O6, A6 is actually H2O anion, and in presence of oxygen it become carbon. That means you can see here carbon dioxide, it becomes carbon dioxide, right? Lots of energy which comes on it. Okay, the next thing is anaerobic respiration. And anaerobic respiration, the first we can, as I told you, two different types of respiration you can see in anaerobic. One is it takes place on the muscle cell. So what we'll see first, what happens on the muscle cells. In anaerobic respiration, in muscle cells, glucose is converted into pyruvate. That means, as I told you, glucose C6 converted into 3, right? 3 carbon pyruvate, and in absence of oxygen, that pyruvate is converted into lactic acid and energy. And this is the one thing I told you, it happens when you do continuous exercise, right? Continuous running, or doing a work continuously at the same place. Sometimes our muscles get cramp. That muscle cramp happens because lack of oxygen takes place on that particular muscle, on that particular place. So what happened? You feel very much pain, irritated, and then what you do? If you go to doctor, the doctor will say go and give some massage. That means hot water massage. So when you do hot water massage over in that place, particular place, normally what will happen? The blood circulation continuously takes place, and it removes the lactic acid, right? And when the oxygen moves in that particular place, then it removes the lactic acid over there. And this is what happened when glucose and becoming pyruvated, it takes place on the cytoplasms. And muscle tissue, what happens? In the absence of oxygen, lactic acid accumulates there, right? This is one form of anaerobic respiration. If you talk about the second form of anaerobic respiration, it takes place in the yeast. In anaerobic respiration in yeast, glucose is converted into pyruvate. Again the same thing. In all the aerobic or anaerobic respiration, the first thing is glucose should pyruvate. That means glucose, 6 carbon molecules becoming 3 carbon molecules plus energy, and this process takes place in the cytoplasm. That is the main thing, right? And in the absence of oxygen, this pyruvate is converted into ethanol, carbon dioxide and energy, right? And this process is called fermentation. Maybe And this is what I told you in 8th standard. Maybe you have tried this in your class activity. Glucose, first thing, glucose is pyruvated. It takes place on the cytoplasms, right? And then this pyruvated one, absence of oxygen, it gets fermented. That means fermentation means alcohol is produced in that place, and carbon dioxide and energy released over there, right? So if you look at this picture, the breakdown of glucose by various pathways, this picture is given in your book also. You can watch it carefully. It's given in page number 102. You can see here glucose, which is having 6 carbon molecules, and this process takes place in the cytoplasm, is converted to pyruvate, and pyruvate means it becoming 3 carbon molecules plus energy. And you can see here, in presence of oxygen, it takes place in the mitochondria, carbon dioxide, water and energy released. And these two are totally different. One is lack of oxygen. Lack of oxygen means it's not the I can say that the permanent one, right? Lack of oxygen takes place for some particular time. Lack of oxygen, that means if you do continuous exercise, you may lose some energy in that particular time. So lose some energy means losing the oxygen in that particular time. So what happened, the lack of oxygen takes place in our muscles, so lactic acid accumulated over there, and this absence of oxygen means completely there is no oxygen. It takes place in the yeast, and the product are ethanol, carbon dioxide and energy. Right, let's move on to the main important thing, respiration in human. Whenever you are talking about the aerobic respiration is the path release more energy, right? That's what we learned in the difference between aerobic and anaerobic. Aerobic organisms need to ensure that there is sufficient intake of oxygen. We have seen that plant exchange gases through stomata, right? And even in the cells. So if you look even in the plants, the direction of diffusion depends upon the environmental conditions and the requirements of the plant. For example, at night time there is no photosynthesis. Okay, if there is no photosynthesis, and the plant, they actually, what happens, it takes carbon dioxide and releases oxygen. This is what happens every daytime. But in night time, what happens, because there is no photosynthesis, no sunlight, carbon dioxide elimination is the major exchange activity going on. That means what, it releases lots of carbon dioxide and takes oxygen. But in during day, what will happen, carbon dioxide generates during respiration, because carbon dioxide is utilized for photosynthesis, and what happen instead, it releases lots of oxygen. So that is why normally in villages they used to say that don't sleep under a tree night time. Why they say that? Because when you sleep at night, sleep under a tree at night time, now usually tree, they releases lots of carbon dioxide in the night time, and if you sleep under a tree at night time, you are intaking lots of carbon dioxide, and that is not good for our health, right? Animals have evolved different organs for intake of oxygen. In case of plants, they have only stomata is there, so through stomata they can take an oxygen, a carbon dioxide, because exchange of gases takes place over there. But in animals, they have an organ to take oxygen or a carbon dioxide. Especially if I take about if classify the animals into aquatic animals and terrestrial animal. Aquatic animals, what they do, if you see, take an example of a fish, even in water we have oxygen, but we don't have that much of oxygen in the water. So what the fish will do, fish breathe faster. So fish takes the water through their mouth and forces it passes through the gills, and the dissolved oxygen is taken up by the blood. But the terrestrial animal, they no need to worry about it because they take oxygen through the nostrils and directly it goes to the lungs, and that it's converted into an energy. Okay, let's learn how the respiration takes place in human. The main organs of the respiratory system are, if you see in the humans, and these are the things. One is they have a nostril means nose, right? And nasal cavity, which is a passage which is taking the air, pharynx, and then larynx, trachea, this is the trachea, right? And then bronchi, which just takes place here, bronchis, and bronchioles, lungs, right, which is present both the side, lungs, and the diaphragm, which is at the bottom sheet, right? And these are the main system, in other words, the main organs which involves in your respiration. Let's go deeper and learn how this respiration takes place in human. When air enters through the nostrils, there are lots of hair and mucus trap the dust particle. Even all the noses, they we have air particle, hairs are there, and also some little amount of mucus will also always there. Why this mucus and hair? Because it trap most of the dust particles. Not only dust particles, some of the bacteria also they trap, and then it passes through the pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronch, and enters the lungs. And then what happens when trachea has a ring of cartilage? Why they have a ring cartilage? Even it prevents it from collapsing when there is no air in the trachea. So that is why we have a ring cartilage. And then the bronchi divides into smaller tubes called bronchioles, which ends in a tiny air sac called alveoli. Here, if you see, watch carefully all these things. The air passes through the nostril first, and it filters all the fine kind of dust particles, impurities, everything, right? And then the air passes through the throat, and it goes to the lungs. The rings of cartilage, why we have that present, why it is present in the throat? Because that these ensure that the air passage does not collapse, it goes straight away within the lungs. The passage divides into smaller and smaller tubes, and it looks like a balloon like structure, and this balloon like structure is called alveoli. And this alveoli provides the surface where the exchange of gases can take place. The wall of the alveoli contain an extensive network of blood vessels. That's what you can see. The alveoli is supplied with the blood vessels through the exchange of gases takes place. And this alveoli helps to increase the surface area for the exchange of gases. Right, how this mechanism of breathing takes place? Maybe you all feel that if you keep your hand on your chest while breathing, you can even feel now. When we take air, when we breathe in, the muscle of the diaphragm contract and moves downward, and the chest cavity expand. The chest cavity, that means the rib cages expand, and the air enters into the lungs. The second thing, when the air breathes out, all the muscles in the diaphragm relaxes. It comes back to its original position and moves upward, and the chest cavity contract. So the now chest cavity come back to the normal position because the air goes out of the lungs. And this is how it happens. You see that when we inhale, when we take air inside, the rib cage expand, it moves up, and the diaphragm moves down. That means its diaphragm started to contract. When we exhale the air, that means it gives out the air, the rib cage come back to the normal position because all the air in the lungs went out, and the diaphragm come back to the normal position, right? And if this is what happens on the mechanism of breathing. During inhalation, the thoracic cavity, that means the chest cavity, expand, rib lift upward, diaphragm become flat in shape, and the volume of the lungs increases and the air enters the lungs. When you exhale, when we gives out the air, the chest cavity contract, rib moves downward, and diaphragm become dome shaped, and volume of the lungs decreases and air exit from the lungs. And I have given you a short video on this, and I will give this link on the description also. Please click on this description and you can look at the video, and it shows a clear understanding of how the air particle, how the mechanism of breathing takes place here. And this is the end of our today's work, student, and I want you to read this completely, and most of these points I have given in point wise, so that it will be easy for you to even keep it in your mind, right? And also I have there are some equations also there, and how respiration takes place, right? You can see an example of ATP and ADPs, and also a glucose in cytoplasm converted to pyrated, and absence of oxygen, lack of oxygen, presence of oxygen, what happens. There are some equations also there, please go through that. Okay, student, and this is the end of the topic, and today we learned from page 101 to 104. In the next class we are going to start transportation. Hope you all understand this topic, and if you still have any doubt, please feel free to ask questions in the message me in the WhatsApp. And thank you, student. Have a nice day.